everybody. Welcome to the Black Men with Purpose podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a safe space where we share our thoughts on a multitude of topics in hopes of helping Black males, young and not so young, overcome obstacles and challenges that could be hindrances to happiness, productivity, and success. We believe that through our experiences, successes, and failures, we can have some conversations that might help other Black males in their respective journeys through this thing called life. On today's episode, our topic is going to be remaining relevant as you age. And we're going to kind of do that through the perspective or through the lens of networking and relationships. So let's kind of jump right into this thing. And I'll start it off with a couple of initial thoughts. I think for many people, specifically here in the United States and in many places in Europe, there's this kind of nagging or gnawing sense of irrelevancy that can suddenly hit you as you begin to age. And I also think that for many, their self worth and identity can kind of suffer a bit as that sense of relevancy starts to fade. We often see it in the workplace when younger generations seem no longer interested in the feedback of older generations. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that in Western societies, generally speaking, we are so much more youth centered, right? And way too often we fail to give careful thought regarding ways that older people can contribute to the lives of current generations. And honestly, while I say we fail to give careful thought, in most instances, we seem to just kind of totally disregard the elderly, which is a topic in and of itself and a topic that I know Rod holds near and dear. But before I get too far down the rabbit hole with all that, I think it's also important to state that each person has to define for themselves what relevance even means. Because like success, relevance is one of those nuanced words that can mean something totally different from person to person. So those are kind of my initial thoughts on it.
I think just to piggyback on what Kev said, I was thinking back as you were talking about my own experiences, sitting at the knee of my grandmother in particular, and listening to all the stories and historical perspective regarding our family, her experiences, and realizing that even though I spent the time or took the time to do that, I really didn't place the appropriate value on what that would mean in my life later on, and mean for me to be able to ingest and pass on, excuse me, to my own kids and grandkids. So, we say that, and I think part of the reason why, or I would just say young people discount that, is because they're so hyper focused on trying to build a life that they want for themselves without realizing that if they took some time to learn and understand the history of what the generations before them had gone through, it might make that building a little smoother, not necessarily easier or better, but smoother, because they would go in from perspective of understanding some of the things that generations before them had gone through, some of the unique challenges that they had, and be able to prepare for that better.
Well, I'll jump in real quick. I agree with what you and Kevin said, Rod. And one thing I could say, one thing that I know I didn't have when I was younger, I didn't have, and I think I can speak for all of us. We all didn't have that maturity level where we would go back and to listen to our elders. I used to think that my dad didn't know what the hell he was talking about when he would be trying to tell me something. I'm like, that's old news. That's a different generation, or what have you. But it took me to to mature, to understand that, what, the things that he was trying to express to me, they were valid points, and I was going through something similar. And I think that's the same thing that we have to. I know the younger generations that are coming up, they have a level of maturity about them that some of them have a higher level of maturity than I know I had, and possibly than any of us had, but then there are still the ones that, are still trying to find their way. But, when the younger folks seem to ask now for our perspective, where at least that's how it seems to me. Then, when I was their age, it was like, no, I'm not trying to get anybody's perspective until I actually matured. So I think that's one of the things that we have tried to do, especially with this podcast, is that we've tried to pass down, some of the lessons that we have learned to others, and that's one of the ways I feel that we remain relevant. But that's just my initial thoughts to start.
Remaining relevant as you age, and I appreciate the perspectives of being younger and what the younger folks, but as we age, the ways that we can remain relevant, because there's a tendency, and I don't want to say that it's specifically for us culturally, but there's a tendency as you get older to kind of get stuck in your ways and, kind of that I know best type of attitude. And I think it's been very refreshing to see all of us kind of employ the element of inviting younger people into our lives and being able to share those different perspectives. I know I'm greatly helped by what I like to call my young bucks. I'm older than all of them. I'm like parent age older than all of them, like 19, 20 some odd years older than them. But to hear their perspectives and to hear how, they're navigating and how things have changed and being willing to kind of immerse myself into things that are different and uncomfortable, to kind of kick that idea. One of the things I say all the time is, we need to stop saying we're too old to do something and just say, hey, maybe I'm not interested in doing that, but I'm never too old to learn something new. I mean, I might be too old to to run a 10-minute 100-meter dash. Now that might be true, but for the most part, a lot of the stuff that we say we're too old to do, it's just a matter of preference, and that's okay. But we need to recognize it's not that we're too old to do something, it's that we don't want to do it because we don't want to close ourselves off. So I think remaining relevant, man, one of the key things that has worked for me is really engaging, and not engaging in a way where, hey, young whippersnapper, listen to what I'm saying, but hear what they say. Just sit back with no judgment. They gonna say some stuff that's wild, but you just gotta hold that desire to clench yourself when they say stuff, and just kind of hear them out, man, and you'll gain some interesting perspective. So I think just to start off, that's something that I found valuable.
Hey, John, if you run a 10-minute 100-meter dash, bro, you in a casket. That's all I'm gonna say.
10 seconds, brother. You know what I meant, 10 seconds.
I knew what you meant, but I also heard what you said.
I can run it in 10 minutes, especially if I zigzag and take a break and lay down. I can do it. I'm not in a casket. I could do it. I could do it. Trust me. I was out there running with my son the other day. I think I could pull off a 10-minute 100.
Yeah, I think this, as far as remaining relevant as you become older, part of that is, I think we learn as you get old, you don't take stuff personal. When you younger, you ain't taking nothing off nobody. You know what I'm saying? When you get older, you understand, whatever you say, sometimes that don't even matter. I'm gonna just take what I need from what you're saying, what you're giving out, and let me apply what I need for my life. The rest of it is like junk. It's like a duck with the water running off their back. They need the water to swim. Hey, I can roll off of that rainwater. So I think being relevant, and this is so funny, I was doing data for my organization. We still got almost 600 people that are 75 years or older that are still working for FEMA. Was like, what? They working in various roles, but I when you talked about this, I was like, man, so you have older people that still want to stay relevant, and some people it's work, some people is reading, some people is volunteer, some people is traveling, but whatever you need to make yourself relevant, that's what you need to do, because what's relevant for one person is not relevant for another. Some, older people, they even had 8, 9 kids, they're relevant because they got 27 grandchildren. You know what I'm saying? For some of us, we don't need all that. we don't need all that to be relevant. So I think you just got to find what makes. I don't want to say do your own thing, but yeah, just whatever it does to make you feel relevant, and that whatever that is. Again, it could be work, it could be your church, it could be what you volunteer, what you give back. A lot of times when you give back, that helps a lot too with you being relevant. So
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things, and a lot of what John said, I honestly was going to say almost verbatim a lot of that, but I think one of the biggest things as you start to age is to always have a why, right? Always try to maintain some sort of purpose. And that doesn't mean that whatever your why was in your 20s or in your 30s or 40s or whatever the case was, that it has to stay the same. Sometimes things change, things morph, but when things do change, you still have to have some sort of purpose and some sort of why. One of my favorite quotes is from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." So I think if you ensure that you maintain some sort of purpose, even if it changes from what it used to be, I think that will help immensely. And then piggybacking what John said, I think we have to continue to grow and evolve and maintain an open mind, and not just. I think some of the issues you see with not necessarily Gen X, I would say, not necessarily my generation, but I would say baby boomers certainly, and traditionalists, and some of the conflict they have with millennials and Gen Zers. And like John said, sometimes the younger people can say something way off, out of left field. But I think oftentimes, in my experience, what I've seen in those interactions is that baby boomers and traditionalists, it's more they're doing. It's more the relationship goes awry, not necessarily because the younger generations aren't listening or whatever all the time, but oftentimes those older generations don't take and don't value what the younger generations have to offer. It's like, I'm older and this is the way that I do things, the way that I did things, this is the way things work. And they don't want to remain open minded. That's one of the worst things. And I think we all hated that in the military, right? When someone says, well, this is the way it's always been done. That's hate that. And so I think we have to always remain open-minded and trying to grow and evolve and listen to some of what the younger folks have to say as well, engaging. And I think also we have to remain healthy, right? That's a big part of it too. Your health goes a long way, I think, in remaining relevant, because if you can't get out and about, you can't do things or whatever, then that's not going to help your cause either. So yeah, I think those are all great ways to kind of help remain relevant.
Yeah, so since I resemble that remark regarding baby boomers and traditionalists, I would tell you it really, for me, boiled down to the fact of embracing what it means to be a lifelong learner, right? We say that and use that term in passing without really being committed to it. And I think that's one of the challenges that older people may have had and maybe still have today, baby boomers and traditionalists, as you say. Because with that, it does mean understanding things from a perspective that might not be your own, right? Because there are things that you can learn from Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, you name it. If they have an original thought or idea of their own, I want to hear it. I want to know where it's coming from. And if it's someone that I actually have an opportunity to influence at all, I want to be able to just give them a different perspective. Maybe mine doesn't make theirs wrong; it just makes it different, right? And also to constantly encourage them to to make sure whatever they come up with, that it's rooted in some type of, not necessarily history that they have to repeat, but understanding, the generations before them and what they had to go through. One, to provide you the freedom and opportunity, to have some of those outlandish thoughts, or attempt to do some of those things that you just thought up last night and you can run out and do now. Because in this country, you hadn't always been able to do that, right? So understanding that part. But for me, it really is about embracing the idea of being a life learner and what that really means. And for me personally, it just means looking at things from a different perspective, understanding that the world as you've lived in it has continued to evolve, change, and if you really want to be relevant or have a relevant voice, then you're really going to have to sit back, listen, learn, and then approach it from a fresh, new perspective.
Listening to you guys talking about it, and I just think back to our military days. We all had senior NCOs or officers that basically didn't want to hear what we had to say because we were, young junior enlisted or young NCOs. Like I said, they thought that their way has always been done this way, and then here it is, we come with fresh ideas, and they didn't want to hear it. The one thing that I appreciate about us is that we had enough gumption about us to evolve. It's like you said, to understand that all the good ideas aren't coming from us. They are coming from the younger generations. And we did take time to listen to them and entertain their thoughts. And if they had a great idea, a great thought, we empowered them to implement things, where we may not have been given that opportunity when we were the same rank that they were. So again, I really appreciated that, the mentorship that we all took ownership in. That's one way I feel, that we all remain relevant. I still talk to some of my old troops. I still talk to some of the folks that I mentored before I retired. I had one young man that I've when I first met him, he was 21. He's 35 now. And he called me last week, and we chopped it up for a while, and we discussed things that were going on in his life. And, he still looked to me for some guidance, so for me, that's remaining relevant. Or, talking to my daughter's friend, this young man is at Ohio State in a doctoral program. And, one of the things that he said that he wanted to do once he finished his PhD is he wanted to become an adjunct professor. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's funny that you say that because one of my best friends just happened to be an adjunct professor. So this is somebody I can put you in contact with my network, someone that can exactly give you some of the steps that you may need to take in order to become what you're trying to become. So again, we evolved instead of thinking that, well, we knew everything. And that's the one thing that I really appreciated about us. And that's what I believe keeps us relevant, so the floor.
I think too, one of the things about what will make you relevant is just treating people like you want to be treated, and then also understanding you don't be in a place or a group of people where you're tolerated. Go where you're not necessarily you're celebrated, but you're appreciated. And I think we learned that too, is that we may have been in places where we weren't appreciated, but you didn't allow that to make you bitter. It didn't make us treat people differently because we weren't appreciated. And so now I think making yourself relevant is, knowing how to treat people and knowing when you are appreciated. Because we got options, we don't have to stay somewhere where you're not appreciated. And it makes with your it mess with your health. If you're with, think about the times if you're at a work environment that's not productive, it causes health problems for you. But now, when you get to the point where you got options and, you don't have to stay somewhere where you're not appreciated. And, but again, the big thing is, as you grow older, don't become bitter. Be open to listen to new ideas and to new things. I think sometimes when people become irrelevant is because they've become bitter about a process in their life. Sometimes people become bitter because of their health challenges, or maybe their financial challenge, whatever it may be. They find themselves becoming bitter. I think for us, we have to work on not becoming bitter. Even with the politics. I mean, yeah, you could be, passionate about who you want to support, but at the end of the day, don't let it make you bitter. Don't let that become part of who you are. Like I said before, let it be like water off the back of a duck. Some things in life, you just gotta let it roll off. And I think if we learn how to do that, we'll be better off as we age. Because how many times you see some old people, you're just like, man, I don't even want to be around them. So yeah, don't become a dysfunctional veteran.
Well, so one of my favorite topics, and I'm sure you all get a kick out of this, was, and of course, I'm still on this journey. So as you laugh out loud, but that's for me. I will tell you, making the attempt to embrace technology.
Mhm.
And people find that strange since I, work around technology and technological solutions every single day. But it's the day-to-day technology that I'm so unbothered by. And I don't know if that's because it has not become relevant enough to me, but I do know that embracing technological advances does support growing and and maintaining relevance as you age. It's a conversation starter or been able to talk, to John about 10% of what he might know until he realizes that I've kind of reached my limit. But making microphones work with different types of computers and all, and not really understanding why in the world that, I'm talking, but you can't hear me. It's just crazy. But I recognize it, and I recognize the importance of just embracing technology as it continues to evolve. And now we're in AI, and that's a whole nother thing in and of itself. But as as I looked into the question and I thought about ways to make it relevant in aging, especially from a networking perspective, embracing technology is definitely one of the jump out to me.
I think too, from a perspective of relevancy, I think it's often looked at, and even maybe to some degree, the discussion we've had to this point may have been a little focused or centered on, our relevance in the world, right? In a sense of, you know, being relevant to other people. But I think just as important, probably even more important, quite frankly, is to be relevant to ourselves, right? That's the most important thing. And I think in order to do that, you have to ensure, as I've already said, and I think as pretty much everyone has said, I know certainly John mentioned it, but continuing to evolve, right? We can't cling too tightly to who we used to be. We have to be continuing to evolve, embracing who we were, right? What we've learned, how we got to where we are, but even more so embracing who we are still becoming. Because as long as we're on this side of the dirt, we should still be growing and evolving and doing all of those sorts of things. So I think we need to make sure that we remain relevant to ourselves. We may be at an age where maybe no one's looking for us to lead the next project necessarily, not in every case, but maybe our kids or our grandkids might think we're the ones who hung the moon. You know what I mean? So there's always going to be value in some way, but we have to just ensure that we're continuing to embrace who we are, remaining relevant to ourselves and for ourselves as well.
Yeah, like just 100%, 10 toes down, stand behind what Kev just said. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think, and it's something we've mentioned before, but a continuous thirst for knowledge, continuous learning, no matter what form. And, Rod was giving me his, I'm going to call it a shout out. He was giving me the shout out, but a lot of times there's things that I know because I needed to do something and I didn't have the ability to call somebody that knew how to do it for me, and I had to figure it out. And, once I get in that mode where I'm just like, I'm not going to allow a lack of knowledge to defeat me if the knowledge is available. And, that's always just like I used to tell people all the time, man, you can't give me access to a system and don't think I ain't going to go in there and try to figure out what it can do because you gave me access. So I'm not going to be in here not knowing what I've got access to. I'm curious like that. And I think relevance fueled by that willingness to continue learning, to be curious, but also, as men that are growing in wisdom, you got to have a willingness to be able to look at the skills that you've accumulated and find, flashpoints to where you can translate that to other generations. There's some amazing stuff we know. Maybe we just can't translate it. Like we might be talking about some amazing music, but be talking about cassette tapes. And they'd be like, what the heck is a cassette tape? I'll never forget, man. I was in Vegas, man, and this is about 13 years ago. Airman came into my office and man, I was bragging about the 6 CD disc changer I had in my car. And he just had this blank look on his face the whole time. And then finally he was like, why do you have a disc changer in your car? I just play all my music off my phone. Man, you could have bought me with a nickel and got change back that day. But, sometimes it's just a willingness. Like,
it's a good thing you didn't bring up an 8-track to him. Lord have mercy.
Because I think it was like 2011. I was talking about, I was proud. Now, if I had been talking about 8 tracks in 2011, man, shame on me, man. I might as well just came out like Antonio Fargas and I'm going to get you something. Shoes. I might as well came out with the bell bottoms and the platforms with the fish in them. You know what I mean? But yeah, you just translate that. And instead of, doubling down on that, I listened to what he said and I, slowly started playing music off my phone. And now my mom be like, can you make me a CD of that? And I'm like, CD? I don't even have nothing I can play a CD in. What are you talking about? And so then be willing to translate, to learn, to kind of do it. Because we've got valuable experiences. Maybe we can't TikTok it and Snapchat it and all this other stuff, but there are bonds that we can make and we can figure out how to translate and download all this wisdom and experience that we have and connect. Because at the end of the day, even with changing times, we're all humans, Yeah.
And I'll be a little vulnerable here too. And I think the main reason that this topic even came to mind for me is because with this change, with this shift, with Felicia and I, this is something we've both always wanted to do, and kind of traveling for real. And we will always travel, but traveling in a way that we're about to do it is something that we've talked about and planned for a while. But once we got here, we got to this point. like I've always, my whole life, I've always had goals, right? I accomplish a goal, I'm on to the next goal. And you get to a point in life and, I ran through all of my education, got the PhD, did all these things. And you utilize all of these things, you utilize your knowledge, you utilize your degrees, your experience and all of that and giving back. And I was teaching and doing all of that. And so my whole life, it all led to a point. And then now with this shift and leaving, higher ed. And then I all of a sudden, for the first time, was trying to figure out, okay, what exactly is my purpose now? Like I've always had a purpose, and now it almost seems like the total focus is just about me and us and going to travel and where do I find purpose and focus in that? And so that's where this whole topic for me even came from. I have dealt with that for the last handful of months, and I am now in a place where I feel good about it. I feel like I have discovered again. But that's why I said what I said in my last, the last time I was talking about making sure that you remain relevant for yourself and embracing change and making sure that you are willing and able to pivot and do all of those things. Like what my purpose had always been is now not what it's not that anymore. It's shifted. And so I now know what my new purpose is and how to go about accomplishing that. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there so that it doesn't come across as though we're just talking at anyone, but it's very personal as well. So I wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, the cool thing about that, Kev, and this is just me pontificating now, but when you mentioned that, I think about as you search for a different purpose, the way I think about it is that all that you've been through, all that you've learned, all that God has placed inside of you, to now take that to a different part of the world and to be able to pass that along to folks who might not have a true perspective of what it's like to be a Black man in America with your background and experiences, to see that you were able to overcome what people perceive as obstacles. You use them as stair steps to achieve things that you set your mind towards achieving. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I looked to pick up that international magazine one day and see a quote from Dr. Kevin Danley, as he was staying in this village for his 90-day nomadic stint here. Here are the things that he was able to impart upon us. And what it did was it motivated men into leadership. It motivated men to be more towards their partners that they needed to be. I mean, it's just so much that, a lot of people don't do because they don't know or they haven't been exposed. So, I'm super excited for you and Felicia in that journey, because I don't even think you fully understand, what you're about to embark on and opportunities that will avail themselves to you. So, good on
I
you.
appreciate that. I really do appreciate those words.
Yeah,
Go
one
ahead.
thing I'd like to say about about this thing on aging and still being relevant. I did a message on Sunday about being committed to the asking. Like so many times, whatever your religious beliefs are, if you believe in a higher power, there are times where you ask God for this, or you ask God for this knowledge, or you ask God for this purpose to be fulfilled in my life, or whatever. But then when that ask is granted, or when He blesses you, are we really committed to it after we receive blessing? And so here I see your situation, Kevin, is like, hey, this may not have been your prayer, but this might have been the prayer like I started with our ancestors. And now we got to ask ourselves, are we committed to the asking to what our grandparents or our great grandparents asked for? Are we still committed to that? You know, here we are with this blessing, but are we still committed to it? Or are we just going to settle with what we have? You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes, so not being settled, and I think John mentioned it about being relevant is taking on what the next steps are and understanding what that responsibility is. Because guess what? As you move forward, as Rod said, somebody's going to look to you as an example of what I can do. They may not do it at the same level, but they're going to do it as necessity for them to be successful. And I think at the end of the day, is if as long as you are successful for what your purpose is, because again, we all of us walk a different journey, but we're all successful in our own journeys, in our own right. And so I think sometimes people get stagnant when they start trying to compare their journey to somebody else's journey. And then you get frustrated and then you just, I'm not doing anything. No, you can't do that. So you got to remain relevant to your journey, and then, you know, and just walk in that and be I don't say be happy, but you got to be happy where you are, wherever you find yourself. And you got to believe that where you are being a blessing. You're being purposeful for not just you, but the people around you. So
Appreciate you.
I love it when God gives a word that you weren't even expecting to get. But I was thinking back to the message from Sunday, a new series that the pastor started on regarding not falling for the comparison trap, because typically that's what people do.
Yep.
They want to compare their lives against their neighbors or their brothers or someone else that they might know. And then they set their goals and their sights on that being the thing that they pursue, as opposed to being committed to and locked into the journey and the path that he's established for you to be on. Right. So that was pretty powerful. And because, you know, it takes a lot to stand alone. Right. So, you know, I think it was John had mentioned earlier about, it's really about the commitment.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. It really is about the commitment to whatever it is that you pursue. It's about the commitment. You know, we all, you know, made a commitment to be great fathers. Right. It's about that commitment. You know, everything else will take care of it. Not necessarily take care of itself, because you still have to do things and make conscious choices. But once you're all in and you're committed to that, then you'll do the work that's necessary. So, but good point. Great stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say, fellas, the one thing as far as like remaining relevant, what have you, being an overcomer. And what I mean by that is, you know, not letting fear, because a lot of people let fear and fear of the unknown prevent them from doing something different or something new, or prevents them from living their best life. Again, or from traveling, or like you said, Kevin, fitness, marriage, you know, those type of things, you know. And again, brother, we are ecstatic for you and Felicia and the journey that you are about to I don't want to say endure, but what you're about to partake in, you know. And I you know, I always say, you know, you and I always joke, and I say I'll live vicariously through you, you know. But again, bro, just to know that to see where your path is leading you now, I'm ecstatic for you, and I can't wait to see where this path is going to take you next. You know, just like I'm ecstatic for the rest of the brothers, you know, with everything that we accomplish or have accomplished thus far. You know, so that's one thing I would, if I was to tell anyone that may be listening, how do you remain relevant as you age or what have you? be an overcomer. Be an overcomer. Don't let fear dictate what you do with your life. That's something I try to express to my daughters all the time. Go live your best life and don't let fear prevent you from doing that, bro. And so again, um, being an overcomer is what I would implore anyone to do. Be an overcomer.
Your ability to succeed is always proportional to your willingness to fail. So, yeah, I mean, you can't let fear dictate what you do. And Lord knows, I can certainly say I've never allowed fear to direct my path. That's for sure.
Bro,
So,
you from Brick City. That's not
yeah,
even a thing. That's not even a thing around the way, man. What you talking about?
that's true, actually. For sure.
Mm.
Well, with that, we want to thank each of you for taking the time to join us. And as we wrap up this week's episode, we want to leave you with a quote from writer and poet, and actually one of my favorite poets, Khalil Gibran, who said, "Your living is determined not so much by what life brings to you as by the attitude you bring to life, not so much by what happens to you as by the way your mind looks at what happens." Until next time, peace.